Hello class, and as always this class is for my students in English 600. If you're watching this YouTube video for any other reason, go read a book, something, read anything. I want to talk today about characterization in Pride and Prejudice, how Austen uses her characters as formal elements of the text, because that's what a character is. A character is not a person in a book. Let me demonstrate for you. Here is a book. No people seem to be between the pages. They create the illusion of being lifelike personages. They're meant to be coherent in certain ways. But her characters aren't necessarily coherent. She is using them for two things that I would like to talk to you about. One as foils, the specific literary tool of the foil, using them to define other characters by contrast, and more importantly, in terms of narrative function, that these characters serve formal narrative roles that are distinct from the character's own imaginary motivations. I'll get to that. I want to talk about basically all the women in general, narrow it down to Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and then move to the more complicated case of Mr. Wickham. So first of all, as I said in an earlier video, Austen has set herself the very hard task of writing a gripping novel based on the virtues of moderation, reasonableness, proportion, right? Lack of excess. Look for the word excessive in Austen's prose. Some of her characters use it loosely to just mean a lot, for hyperbole. It is always a bad thing for Austen. Austen always understands excessive in the original sense as too much. So her heroine, Elizabeth Bennet, is kind of not the most of anything. If you're a romantic novelist, a romance writer, you can just, a romantic poet, you can just make your protagonist the most, the best, the most passionate, the most bold, the most daring, the prettiest. Elizabeth is maybe the most reasonable. Elizabeth is defined by who she is not, particularly the other female characters, who are in a somewhat, in a negative way. There's an old essay called The Regulation of Hatred in Pride and Prejudice, which gets to partly to this. These other characters who are looked at askance, who are defined in opposition to Elizabeth. Elizabeth is defined in opposition to the other female characters. She is not like them. They share her flaws. This one is too nice. This one is too, like Elizabeth might be the smartest, but she's not. But Mary is too studious, too intellectual. It's not natural. It seems studied. So by contrast, she makes Elizabeth seem smarter and more relaxed. Jane is too nice. Right? Elizabeth's problem is not that she's too nice. In fact, one of her qualifications for being Mrs. Darcy is that she's not too nice. She is not like Lydia, who has no sense of this. She's not like Charlotte, who's more calculating. It's the Goldilocks principle, but not simply as the middle of three. Elizabeth is positioned along many, many axes in which she is put in a median position, and this gets to something like the ideal. She is defined by difference. If you've already taken 601, I think you'll see how that works. If you haven't taken 601 yet, here's an example for you when you do. Elizabeth Bennet is defined not by who she is, but by her difference from other characters. Those other characters exist in this novel as things to define her by difference. Foil. In the same way, many of the male characters do the same work around Darcy. Bingley, too nice, too easygoing, too easily influenced. Darcy, not too easily influenced. Mr. Wickham, big problems all the kind, right? Like more nicer, superficially nicer, but unprincipled, not like the D-Man, And again, Mr. Collins, etc., etc. Actually, Colonel Fitzwilliam, all these gentlemen and knaves are designed to be not Darcy. And that is how we know who Darcy is, by who these guys, by who he's not. One of the biggest, the character who kind of serves as a foil for both Elizabeth and Darcy is Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who is on one level the richest, the highest ranking person. She's got a title, she's got a lot of money, she should be at the top of the apex, but she behaves like a goddamn savage. She has no manners, she's rude, she's crass, she is ill-bred. She therefore functions both as a foil for Elizabeth, who, while lower down the social order, is a more appropriate, better mannered person who is better trusted with the kind of wealth and power that she's about to marry into, and as a comparison to Mr. Darcy, whose manners, while stiff and hard to get to know, he is in no way as rude as his terrible aunt Catherine, Lady Catherine. And in some ways, Lady Catherine kind of balances the scale between the novels. If Elizabeth has to be embarrassed by both her parents, especially her mother, well, now there's a female character for Darcy to be embarrassed of. If the novel seems much, much harder on the female characters than the male characters overall, yes. Did a female writer do that? Yes. Is that potentially bad solidarity? You betcha. Jane Austen would probably not get a job today on the, let's say, Smith College Women's Studies Department. It's been over 200 years. The conversation about what's good for women has moved. Lady Catherine also is a character who operates as a plot function. Don't think about what characters want. They express desires, they express motivations, but as in plot, this is just an excuse to get them to do the thing that Austen, as a kind of architect and plotter, needs, and structure builder, needs them to do. Sometimes the most important thing about characters is they fulfill narrative functions. They move the narrative forward in different ways. They play very specific roles that then it gets carefully disguised as incidental things, as casual things, right? Separate from what the character wants. One master course level of this is near the end of the novel, because our lovers have been separated, and because the rules of both Regency society and the marriage plot respectively keep them from actually writing to or visiting each other, because either one would be inappropriate, socially inappropriate in Darcy's case, generically inappropriate in Elizabeth's case, and cause many readers to judge her and call her hussy. They need a go-between. They need a friend to pass a note for them in study hall so they can get together. They need somebody. Now, a lesser writer would find someone like Jane and Bingley. Someone sympathetic to the lovers will help them out. Austen makes that key go-between not an actual ally, but an enemy. One of Lady Catherine's, her ultimate function in the book, and I mean ultimate literally in terms of her final function in the book, is to get the message back actually to both lovers, right? In that key scene, which I'll talk about more in next week's videos, where she shows up unannounced, rude, at the Bennet house, picks out Elizabeth and demands she walk around the garden with her, and then says all this stuff, right? Her attempt as a character to block this marriage that she's heard rumors about, to forbid it, functions in the novel as the necessary piece of information that enables the marriage. She is actually the messenger and go-between. Instead of having a friend, a sympathizer, Mrs. Gardiner, sympathetic Cinderella-esque birds, whatnot, a mistaken letter to get all hacking and Shakespearean, to clue them in, the enemy does it. Because she goes and says, I heard these rumors that you're going to marry my nephew. I forbid it. I demand you not do that. And Elizabeth, I don't know what a rumor. And Monk's like, what rumor is that? And then, of course, we're told off backstage, Lady Catherine then marches off to Darcy and says, how dare you? I did. And the D-man is like, and she rejected that. Did she? Right? Boom. He's headed for Herefordshire and Longbourn. Note the distinction between what the character wants to do and the way the character serves the narrative structure. This is even more important with the case of Mr. Wickham. Wickham is a crucial central figure. His function in the plot is to keep these two characters, our main two characters, our lovers, from being together. What he does do that is inconsistent. So he flirts. First, Wickham can be defined on one level as the principle that prevents Darcy from being with Elizabeth. First, he does this by the normal kind of blocking way, by flirting with her and talking trash about Darcy, right? He flirts with a girl, he talks trash about her, about his romantic rival. This is a time-honored, fairly simple way to keep Darcy from having a successful marriage proposal. He moves along. He later becomes, by the end of the novel, he is blocking it because he's created a scandal, because he's like eloped with Elizabeth's little sister. Are these two things? These two things might be like consistent in the sense of like Wickham's character. He's so unprincipled. He flirts with everybody, but they have nothing to do with each other. What Wickham doesn't want, and actually what Wickham wants actually is he demands to get a connection with Darcy. He wants some connection with Darcy, so he's going around and all the women in Darcy's orbit and doing various things. Wickham finds a way to make it difficult for Darcy, or impossible. He presents an obstacle for Darcy to get Elizabeth. He does this for a group of different reasons. His alleged motivations, what he wants to do, is inconsistent and is often like contradictory. It doesn't matter because that's not what Wickham wants. Doesn't matter. He's not a person. He doesn't actually want anything. He functions. He is a formal element of the plot. He is the blocking function. Darcy cannot actually get Elizabeth till he has done something to convert Wickham, and he's done certain things to flip Wickham around and try and turn Wickham into something that facilitates his eventual marriage with Elizabeth and makes it possible. That is also has nothing to do with what Wickham wants, because Wickham doesn't want anything. This novel does not arise from the characters' actual human desires. They don't have any. It arises from a complicated, highly logical narrative structure that the characters serve in various ways and seem to want to do things in order to serve their role in that larger structure.